As a trainer, if there was one thing I could pick for anyone who works out that they could work on now to benefit them when they get back in the gym, it would be one thing: technique. Let's talk about that. A quote I refer to quite a bit is move better, feel better, perform better. Improving range of motion by foam rolling, stretching, and striving for proper technique will help you experience less of the detriments that come when your form sucks. Once you've mastered basic mechanics, only then can you experience true performance gains in the gym. Choosing to move better is also one of the few things we have in complete control when it comes to working out. So what does moving better look like? First and foremost, it means less ego lifting. I was an amateur powerlifter for far too long to not understand what ego lifting is. Now let's talk technical. If proper lifting technique is not at the top of your goals list, you need to reevaluate. Training is called training for a reason. You train movement, you train strength, and you train your nervous system. Whether you have access to loads of equipment or not, you still have a capacity to train these elements. Let's take my favorite lift, the deadlift. As a new trainer, I fought way too hard to put a barbell in all of my clients' hands and get them deadlifting at least their body weight. It was only after this trial and error that I became frustrated, not understanding why my clients couldn't just flatten their back or don't lead with your hips. First, I had to learn not everyone needs to barbell deadlift. Secondly, if they were going to, they had to train for it. The hinge is one of the most complicated moves we can do because it's something that doesn't come naturally. Even though it's been hammered into our heads that we need to lift with our legs and keep our back flat, it's not something that somebody without great control can do very easily. If your hinge sucks, I suggest working on these few things while you're out of the gym to make it so your deadlift gets better once you're back in the gym. The hinge is a hip dominant movement, which means that you should start by mobilizing the muscles in and around your hips. That means foam rolling and stretching your glutes, hamstrings, quads, hip flexors, and spine. Then technique. I want you to stand flat up against a wall, facing away. Walk one foot right in front of the other, and then take a neutral, natural stance. Place one hand on your chest and one on your lower back. These are there to help with awareness. All you're gonna do is imagine there's a $100 bill on the wall behind you, and you're gonna try to grab it with your cheeks. This is called a posterior hip slide, and most people compensate for their inability to do so by flexing their spine or their knees too much. Once you've mastered the posterior slide, you can then add the knee bend that turns it from an RDL into a deadlift. Train this movement. If you have dumbbells, use them. If you have bands, use them. If you don't have any equipment, get creative. Master it on 2 legs, then master it on 1 leg. Once you do, you'll have a ton more confidence once you're able to add more weight once you're back in the gym. Let's stick with the lower body and talk squatting next. Squatting is one of the most controversial movements in the lifting world. Is it bad for your knees? Is it bad for your back? Should I squat ass to grass? Should I go below parallel, at parallel, above parallel? Lucky enough, I've been able to see thousands of people squatting, and I can tell you comfortably, it depends. While the lifting world isn't black and white, there are some general lifting principles that we can apply. The squat, however you break it down, is very hip and knee dominant. The most common mistakes I see as a trainer are shooting your hips up, not attempting to maintain thoracic extension. Try this. Take a stance that you would if you're gonna jump as high as possible. Rotate your heels out and then your feet. Your feet should point out a few degrees. Create some tension by pressing your feet and your knees out. This will make room for you to sink into your hips. Just like the deadlift, start with a posterior hip slide. Unlike the deadlift, I want you to start moving your knees immediately after. Allow yourself to sink between your hips while maintaining tension throughout your upper body. This, not this. Remember, in the squat and the deadlift, we want the hips and the legs to move so that our back doesn't have to. we've got areas of mobility and areas of stability. Our hips are supposed to be quite mobile. Our midsection, our core, is supposed to be very stable. Move where you're mobile, stabilize where you're stable. Now let's switch to upper body. Let's talk about pulling things. The most common fault people have with pulling is that they either use too much trap or they use too much bicep. They fail to retract their scapula and fail to maintain thoracic extension. If you suck at pulling, I invite you to try the following. Firstly, you're gonna wanna mobilize your upper back by foam rolling and stretching your lats, pecs, and general thoracic spine. Find something to use as resistance and hold it in both hands. Use the deadlift technique that you perfected to get into a bent over position. Now, imagine you're trying to bring whatever object you grab closer to the logo on the front of your shirt without bringing your logo closer to the object. This, not this. Do so by leading with your elbows and keeping your neck long. These strategies will apply the same once you're able to do pull-ups. Long neck, extended upper back, retracted scapula. Lastly, let's touch on upper body pressing, such as push-ups, bench press, and overhead press. The main issues I see when it comes to pressing are very similar to what I see with pulling. An inability to properly move their upper back and little connection to the muscles that are meant to be loaded. What this translates to is that when they go to do a push-up, their shoulders shrug up to their ears and their face falls toward the floor, and they hardly move at all. Let's fix it. Firstly, you're going to want to take the same mobilization strategy you took before doing your pulling. After that, find something to hold with both hands, such as a dowel or a broomstick. You're going to want to go through the pressing motion and be sure you can do it without rounding your back or shrugging your shoulders. Afterwards, find a push-up progression that's super easy for you to do, either kneeling or with your hands elevated. Allow your shoulder blades to retract and let your elbows bend. Do your best to keep your torso rigid and keep your head in line with your shoulders. Everything that applies on the descent applies on the way up. Once you've mastered the easier version, then work towards a full push-up or a progressed push-up with the same form. I hope you guys learned a lot when it comes to technique for the 4 basic exercise patterns. You're going to want to have these nailed down no matter your strength levels, as it will ensure that you'll be maximizing your results and limiting the chance for injury. If you have any other questions or topics you'd like me to cover, drop them in the comments down below and subscribe for more content. Thanks everybody. I'll catch you in the next one.